All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the stream. I hope everybody is doing well tonight. Maget's up, and I was official. How are you guys doing? Good to see you. Hope you are doing well. Week is going okay so far. Can't complain too much. Yeah. Um, I do want to mention though, I have been having a bit of a dental issue that I've been dealing with, so talking for long periods of time hasn't been really easy. So we're going to see how this goes tonight. I may wind up having to shut down early as a result, but hopefully not. Um, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's something I'm looking to get resolved as soon as possible. But yeah, it is what it is, right? But yeah, otherwise, we're doing pretty good. 3D Code Warrior, hello, how's it going? Good to see you. All right. This week we're going to do one of two things. But before we jump into any of that, I do just want to take just a quick second and thank the supporters of the channel, starting with our partners who are the highest tier of subscription over on Patreon and YouTube memberships. They are Dustin Punt, Gabby Bashir, and Gerboles Inc. I would also like to thank all the supporters of the channel that are listed here. They are a combination of the other tiers of support over on Patreon, YouTube memberships, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. It helps me cover expenses with running this channel, running the project, equipment costs, hosting costs, things like that. So thank you very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. And I hope it goes without saying that I do appreciate each and every one of you guys here, whether you're catching the VOD or catching us live here on the Twitch or the YouTube side. We do simulcast to both, so I do have both of those chats up and visible, and we monitor both of those. And so this is to be an interactive stream, so I'd like interacting with you guys. So feel free to jump in and chat, and we'll if you have any questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability. Or if you just want to say hi, that's fine too. So, all right. Me and Mr. Mustard, how's it going? Good evening to you too. As much as I'm eager to see the game dev continue, I think you should wait. As much as I'm eager to see the game dev continue, I think you should continue the game dev. That way you can actually work on the game again sooner. Do you mean engine dev or game dev? Because you said game dev twice. I assume you mean engine dev. Yeah, okay. All right, yeah. And that's kind of what I'm leaning more towards as well. I was really enjoying the game design document, but we did actually kind of list a few features that I think we are going to need to come up with. I believe we put those down here at the bottom, I want to say, in one of the appendices. Yeah, so we've got a little bit of a list here of things that we can work on in the meantime. So, my thought for tonight was to kind of continue where we left off with our resource stuff. And then maybe we can jump back to this at some point. But yeah, let's call this thing episode 231. Yeah, and that's kind of where I was like, well, which direction do I want to go? So I figured I would kind of leave it up to you guys and figure out from you guys which direction you would kind of like to keep going in. I'm game for either one. It's been a bit since I've actually touched this code. I completely took a break from it, actually, just because I needed a break from coding in general. So, I'll have to sort of refresh my memory as to what we were doing fully, but it shouldn't be too bad. All right, so with all that said, I guess we'll continue coding for a bit. So let me let's see. How do I? Let's see. Let me edit the title of this. So let's see. Let's call this. Oh, you know what? I don't remember what the old stream titles were. Let's see. Give me just a second here to pull up the old title because I want to make it kind of consistent. So let's see. Probably should have done this before I started the stream, but it is what it is. Here we go. Okay, so I'll just rename the stream here real quick. All right, and we're going to call this episode 231. So we'll save that. And I'll do the same thing over here on the Twitch side. And we're going to keep the title relatively the same as last time. I mean, I guess it's not really Dingus-oriented design fix either. I guess it's really more of a resuming resource redux. So I guess let's actually change it to that so that the title is a little bit more appropriate to what we're doing. All right. Happy hump day. Awesome. Good to see you. Yes, it is hump day. I have not had a chance to try Unfairy Tale. I've actually spent a good portion of the weekend and post-stream last week away from the computer, actually, in general. Just because every once in a while you need to do that, right? So I haven't actually touched code. I haven't touched any of this stuff since our last stream. And that's just, kind of one of the things you should do every once in a while just to sort of prevent burnout, right? So I have not checked it yet. I have not checked it out yet, but I do have it on my list of to-dos to check that out. So, okay. All right. So where we left off last time with the resource stuff is we were in the middle of refactoring our texture resource, which is actually going to be the most complicated one out of all of them, which clearly is why I bit it off first. Why not start with the most complicated thing, right? So what we're doing is we are changing essentially one usage of textures, and we're just going to sort of change out use by use until we get everything cycled out. So we're still on that sort of first use case of textures, which is the standard UI system. And so the way that that's going to work is we're essentially going through and just fixing compilation errors for right now. And then once we actually get this building and running, we'll solve runtime errors. And then once we have sort of the UI texture thing figured out, we'll move on to fixing it in our font system, fixing it for loading all of our meshes and things like that. But you touched grass, which is more important. Yes, I literally touched grass, actually. All right. So, I fixed this error here, I believe. So let's build this and see what we get. All right, so we need a SUI button. Where was that? 92. So most of this is like converting from texture maps to K-resource texture maps, right? So K-resource texture map. And then this is just, I think, going to be Atlas, if I remember correctly. And then this is also going to be, K-resource texture map counts. So essentially what we're doing is we are converting all the usage of this to use the K-resource version, and then we'll, once we're no longer using sort of that old version of the texture stuff, we will strip out all of that. So that's that one. And let's see, we have a deprecated note here. SUI panel 63. That's probably going to be the same Atlas issue. Yep. So that's going to be K-resource texture map, which means that this down here is also going to be that, and this is going to be that, and then this is just going to be Atlas. Right. Let's see. We have standard UI plugin main. Okay, so we'll have to check that out. Standard UI plugin main. We're not using the render graph in here. I guess since we have UI render graph node, that's what's actually including it. So let's get rid of that. And this is just where we're setting the UI atlas. So I believe this is just going to literally be atlas. And the UI atlas is already a key resource texture map. So let's build that again. Testmed main has a reference to it as well. Let's see. We've been working on a BVH. It's way simpler to implement than an octree. Depends on which way you build it, or do you build it dynamically? Octree space partitioning always makes me confused. And although I've made a rule, I just follow a 3-bit binary system. Each bit represents an axis. That makes sense. If it's positive, if it's set, it's on the positive side, otherwise negative. That makes sense. You're going to write confused and disoriented. That's fair. We might experiment with a few different of those. The space partitioning, right? We might do BVH. We might also do... we're probably going to start with octree, because that's like the most historically used one, right? So we're probably going to start with a version of that. And then, you know, if we decide to move on to something else, we can use it. We'll probably provide both. Sergeant Pepper. How's it going? Yes, Spiro did that to you the other day, as I recall. Yesterday, I think it was. It was pretty funny. Yesterday, I helped some master students with their research. I had to watch videos, make presentations with a VR headset on, while walking down the Salzach River. That doesn't sound like fun to me. That sounds like an opportunity for accidents to me. But that's because I'm a clumsy putz. All right. All right, so testbed main 971. 971. Okay, so UI render graph node set atlas. So this function takes a texture map, and we are now trying to feed it. Well, first off, something that doesn't exist, but now we're actually trying to feed it a key resource texture map. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to refactor that function. So let's go to definition on that, and this is going to be a key resource texture map. We can actually just forward declare that, so let's do that. Key resource texture map. Right, and then UI render graph node. And let's see, all right, I guess we don't need the K handle, fine. Skip deprecation warnings for now. This is what we need to change. So this needs to be K resource texture map, and that should map pretty much directly. Okay, so internal data on this one is actually a texture map as well. So that needs to be K resource texture. All right, now that's a one-to-one mapping. Let's see, is there anything else in here besides, looks like there is one warning in here somewhere else, right here. So we just need to convert this. Let's see, renderable atlas override. So standard UI renderable. This also probably needs to be a K resource texture map. So that works. That's probably going to cause other errors. Reading the Aaron Cato's article on BVHs, or it's more of a GDC presentation. Yeah, that's probably what I'll do if I go to implement a BVH, because I'll need a refresher on that for sure. It was actually a really nice afternoon. Knowing me, you'd be sure I made the students laugh a lot. Yeah, that's fair enough. All right, so back to SUI label. Okay. So, Atlas override for fonts. Why is that bleating? Let's see, typed data. Label internal data. Well, let's see. Oh, I think this is what was pointing to. Oh, I think I know what the problem is here. Caps lock. Data, which is font data. Yes. Okay. So this part we're not going to actually be able to solve until we redo the font system. Reason being is because the font system also requires use of...
Less than 3.
Dr. Elliott, thank you so much for the Prime resub for 2 months. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you very much. That support means a lot, so thank you. Right back at you with the heart there, too. Will the K handles be deprecated after the new resource system is ready? No, because we're going to still use handles for other types of resources, I think, or other things in the system. Because resources have their own sort of handle that they use, but like, yeah, less than 3. It's pretty funny. It read it out like that. Yeah, so resources have their own sort of reference counting and whatnot that they use internally. But systems that use those things don't really have that. So for example, we might want to use a K handle to refer to a texture instead of actually using the texture pointer, which is another thing I'd like to refactor at some point. I don't know if I'll get to it before we actually ship a game, because I'm thinking that that's going to be a pretty massive refactor that I'm not sure I want to do right now. But things like meshes and whatnot, I eventually want all of those to use handles instead of actual pointers to resources. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm thinking. MD Fury, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Welcome. Working on an inventory system that supports different types of schemas and a data-oriented design, so specialized grid can interact with a generic list-style inventory. Sweet. That sounds like a lot of fun. I can't wait to get into that kind of stuff, making that kind of thing. It's going to be a lot of fun, especially when we get to the gameplay code. I'm really looking forward to making that. I can drop the link to PDF somewhere. Magetsub, if you wouldn't mind, actually. Well, I would just say, I have you on DM. Would you mind DMing that to me? And then I could probably just drop it on the Discord server somewhere. On like resources or something. I don't know if links still actually work on resources, so I have to check that. It might actually delete it on you, now that I think about it. Perfect. Cool. I got that. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right. So this, I believe I had to actually do another fix me somewhere. So that's what we're going to do here. Change to use K resource texture and font refactor. Right, so what I'm going to do for here is I'm just going to temporarily set that override to nothing, which means our fonts are not going to render. But that's okay, because this is an interim step, right? Okay, so we've built successfully. I highly doubt this is going to run. I would be shocked if it does. But let's see what we get. All right, so let's go ahead and run. Okay, so we did hit a debug break. Asset system 146. Oh, we didn't get a state. That's pretty sweet. So asset system request. Let's see. Let's maybe make this a little bit larger so we can see what the heck we're looking at here. Okay. So we have made a request for an asset. Or at least we're starting a request for an asset. Okay, so self asset system. Okay, so here's the issue right here. So this doesn't have, we don't actually have, in the resource handler itself, we do not have the asset system. Okay. So in the, that's going to be a K resource system issue whenever we're setting up the registration of handlers. We should also probably go ahead and set up the asset system here, right? A pointer to that. So I guess we can do we have that in the state? No, we do not. We should probably save it there. Let's come back to that. When we stand up the system, we have our handlers here, but let's do a struct kasset system state asset system. Right, we're just going to hold a convenience pointer there for that. So we'll say struct kasset system state. Right, and then when we set this guy up, we will do state asset system equals engine systems get asset state. Right, and then down here, wait, incompatible pointer types. Struct asset system state. Oh, there's no K in front of it. Okay. This here. Actually, I wonder if I even need... Yeah, I do need the struct. Okay. All right, so let's go down here to the bottom, and then we'll say this is equal to state asset system, right? So that way every handler gets that. That should eliminate that issue, assuming we actually set up the state of that system correctly. Maybe not. Nope, yeah, okay. I set up a breakpoint here, so I think we're good as far as that goes. So let's continue. All right, we run, but it looks like our resource didn't actually load. Okay, so let's examine the logs, because we're never going to find it in here. So at least it runs. It didn't crash, right? So that means we probably just didn't load the resource properly, I'm guessing. Here we go. Okay. Successfully loaded texture. Oh, okay. that's for a font. Okay, so descriptor type, image view, swap chain image. Swap chain image. Why are we getting issues with that? Okay, this tells me that we are probably, for some reason, we're getting the swap chain image where we're actually trying to, probably because it's the first texture created, I think we're using that instead of actually using the actual loaded resource. So we may have to put some more debug logic in here to actually fully figure out what's going on. Let me make sure that there's no other... Oh, here's a couple errors here. Non-writable 2D textures must have exactly one texture asset. Instead, 0 was provided. And that's creating the default texture. So that's interesting. Failed to request resources for default texture. Okay, so we got a couple of things going on here. That's probably the first thing that we're going to have to look at. Okay. Not a huge deal. We'll debug it, right? So, I guess let's grab this. And we'll go ahead and put a breakpoint here. And then we'll also grab this and put a breakpoint here, just so that we can actually see that happening. Are you using Linux? Yes, I'm on Arch at the moment. Yep. Arch, by the way. Was going to write a system in my Vulkan renderer that adds some new lines to those validation messages. They are so hard to parse, eyes bouncing all over the place when you try to read it. My mild dyslexia isn't making anything better either. I hear you on the dyslexia. I've got that as well. Hardcore, actually. But what I do a lot of times, and I might actually, like, I don't know. I've kind of thought about putting in like a pull request that splits this stuff out to multiple lines, but I don't know if they're going to accept that. But what I usually do is I just kind of go in here and I'm like, okay, well, there's the object. I'll create a new line. And then here's another object. I'll create a new line, right? And then where this pipe is, I'll create a new line. So what I'm actually thinking about doing is like anytime I run across certain characters within this string, I'm probably just going to insert a new line before I log it out, is what I'm thinking. And since we actually have the Vulkan debugger, we actually have that string before we write it out to the console, we technically could do that. We could just inject it at that point. Yeah. So like I might just do something where like I replace this with like a new line or something. I don't know. Haven't really fully decided yet. Because I don't know if the pipe is ever used elsewhere or not. But was a spline editor one of the required features? How are you going about making one? Yeah, it was one of the features. I think I put that in here. Yes, I did. Right there. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to make a spline editor that essentially has your basic handles that you can create in the world, right? So you'll click somewhere in the scene to like create it, and then you'll be able to grab the endpoints, the control points, move them around in 3D, of course, and then be able to specify like how many segments from end to end you have, sort of the resolution of the mesh that gets created, and be able to change that stuff in real time. So we're going to create all that stuff. We'll be able to create and edit the geometry in real time. Okay, so with that, let me actually undo this stuff and run. So we got some breakpoints in there now. Okay, so our texture type is 2D, and so we do not have base asset length, right? So we have no assets for this. Okay, which actually makes sense. So this error, actually does make sense. Because what we're doing, and I hadn't considered this when I wrote this code, is we are creating default textures, right? So the texture data is actually created in memory. I could have swore, though, assets required false. Right. Okay, so we detected assets required as false via the flag being set to writable. So we passed this test, but this is not a correct error condition. So we also need to check here if assets are required. Okay, so let's go into this, and we'll do, it was like around line 40. Yeah. So in both of these cases are going to fail, right? So in this case, if assets required, right? If they're not required, so if we have assets data, and I think we actually have, yeah, we have pixel data here that gets used. So this code considered that. Info data. Okay, so I think the rest of this should actually be good to go. I think this is just a matter of we had to actually check this. So I guess let's actually condense this a little bit. Let's take this. And put it here. And we're going to say else. Actually, I guess we'll say else. Actually, I guess we could literally just do... No, let's do else. Else if. Else if. Okay, so these are texture type specific checks. This is a non-specific check, but it says if assets are required, we need at least one. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense, I think. All right, let's run again. Oops, I need to restart. Okay. Oh, cool. We got a allocation failure, which I'm guessing we tried to allocate something with 0 entries in it. Valid allocator size and alignment. Let's see. So what did we try to do here? Size of 0, yeah. We should probably... Do we have assertions on this? We should probably add some, right? We should probably just be like, hey, if you try to allocate with no size, it's gonna scream at you, you dingus. I probably should have added that a long time ago, to be completely honest. Let's go here, and so here. Since this calls through to allocate aligned, I'm just going to do the check here. So I'll do OK assert. Actually, I'll do OK assert message. And then we'll do size. And then we'll say OK allocate aligned requires a non-zero size. That way, if we do it, we'll call out the specific version of code, or the specific area of code that's doing it, and not have to like trace that debug tree. All right, so let's do that. I mean, I could have done that anyways. It still creates a breakpoint, right? But at least this way, it'll specifically, it'll be a little more specific anyways, I guess. K-array init. Okay, so our stride is 8, our length is 0. K-image pointer create. Okay, so this is probably some more code that's not considering... Right. This is something else that we should not be doing unless... Right, we should probably actually have an assert in our array logic as well. All right, so let's take a look at... what did I call that? When we do K-array init, yeah, I did create unit tests for this, but I didn't think to try and create a unit test for like a 0 length one, so that's probably something we should add as well. Okay, so let's do a kassert debug, right? Because we don't want this in production. We're going to say we want length. And we also want to assert stride. I guess we could assert all of this stuff, right? Although this is not really externally used, so these should be fine, but I guess let's go ahead and just, right? Out length, out stride, and block. Right, and that's the first pointer to block, not the second pointer to block that we change, because we allocate the data pointed to by block is where we do that allocation. So that should be fine. Okay, so that should help carry that through. Whoops. Let's go back to our request here. And we'll say if assets required. Then we do that. Otherwise we don't, right? Okay. Let's see. I'm going to copy this. Wait. Okay, so Spark Blues, I'm going to copy your question. So question in chat. Is this. Oops. Crap. That. So they have string reference a equals hello, cout dot c string. What is the difference between the two of them? I did not understand. Why should I use c string? So the difference is that you're accessing the string class itself. You're outputting the string class itself, which I believe should work just fine. But also c string is basically the underlying character array, right? So A is basically saying we want to output the contents of string itself, right? Which has to have a way to actually be able to do that via an operator overload, versus using a.cstring, which is basically saying give me the underlying C string that is in A, which is just a character array, which is similar to the exact same actually as the C strings we use here in C. So there's certain functions that can only work with C strings. There are certain functions that only work with strings. For outputting though, I don't think it's been a minute since I've actually used that function in C++, to be completely honest. I never actually use it because I think that operator overload is terrible. But I believe the stream operator overload in the string class should work just fine. It should work in either scenario, I believe. But again, it's been years since I've touched C++, so somebody in chat might correct me if I'm wrong on that. Nivimi, how's it going? Good to see you. Hot Tub, hello. Good to see you as well. Let's see. Will you use any of the existing gizmos for that, or create a new one? I'll probably use existing gizmos for that. Yeah. As far as like the manipulating it in space, right? I'll probably just use the existing one. Which I'll have to use like a limited version of that gizmo, so it would only allow you to move. Wouldn't, like, rotation makes no sense for a point, right? And scale makes no sense for a point. You're talking for the editor, for the spline editor. So yeah, we'd have a gizmo that basically says only allow us to transform. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Making a SIMD version of quat to rotation matrix. Oof. Yeah. I'll bet that's fun. We still have to actually do SIMD, but I think for this first game that we're creating, I don't think it's going to be necessary, believe it or not. That's not going to be our performance bottleneck anyway. All right, let's bring back our debugger. Okay, I saw an error up there before. What was the error? Image memory barrier. What is the... Oh, again with the swap chain images. Okay. So this is complaining about, looks like a layout transition. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that for right now because I have a feeling that's probably fallout from another issue that we have. Creating default texture. Yes. Okay, so I wonder... I'm guessing we probably don't have something in the Vulkan backend hooked up correctly to be able to actually execute that directly. So I'm going to continue the application for now and see where we get. Looks like a crap ton of validation errors. All right, are we at least getting a texture? Not really. Well, it looks like that might actually be our default texture there. Okay. All right, so let's again turn to the console log. And let's see, have a look at what all this crap actually translates into. We did see some errors down here. I thought we saw errors before this, actually. This is having to do with descriptor rights for swap chain images. Why we're doing that, I don't know, but I think, again, we're probably binding the wrong image somewhere. Interesting. Okay, so loading asset null from package null. Neat. Okay, so something potentially within our string system is not working correctly. Again, this is all untested code, so I'm not terribly surprised. All right, so let's do no package name null exists, nothing was done. I wonder what asset it's actually trying to load. So let's actually figure that out. So that's going to be in our VFS right here. And I think that's actually the first call to that. So let's see what is actually doing that. Okay, that's cool. Those are both 0. That's why it's not working. All right, so how did we get there? Texture request, okay. Asset info. Package name, asset name. Okay, so we have those here. Okay. And there's 0 here, so lookup. So let's see, what did we do here? We have... Oh, I bet I know what we did. Okay. I'll bet I know what we did. So we're doing an asset system request, right? We do have a package name here and an asset name here. So we have lookup index invalid ID, which it is here. So that means that we're requesting a new asset, right? Then we go through and we find a free slot, which is the first one. So that's going to be the first thing that we look up, right? So we're going to go ahead and take that. But then we are actually using a bunch of data in the lookup that hasn't actually been set up yet. Right, so the first thing that we do is we make sure that this lookup is usable, right, and it is. And then if we take a look at the lookup itself, right, everything is 0, right? We haven't actually initialized any of this data, but then we come down here and we use it like the asset type and that kind of thing. We set up all of this stuff based off of information that hasn't actually been set yet. So that's foobar, to say the least. So let's take a look at the asset system. Asset system. And that was, I think, around line 145, was it? Yes. Okay, so in this case, we have this set up. Okay, so here we create a new identifier, and then we need to set up some additional information, right? So we need to say lookup. Oops. And I guess at this point, we have to set up some stuff on the asset, right? So we're going to do type equals, and I think we pass through type. We do. We'll also have to do lookup asset name equals name. Lookup asset package name equals package name. Auto release we need to set as well. That might actually be it. Okay, so lookup asset, oops, I think it's just lookup auto release equals auto release. Name, was it asset name? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it might actually help to set these things up before we then use them, right? Here, as well as here, right? Gee, go figure. We are fixing dingus-oriented programming after all. Right. Okay, so package name string, plugin UI standard. Perfect. Okay, so this means that our string tables are most likely correct, right? So we have standard UI Atlas, and we have plugin UI standard. Perfect. Okay. So that means that those, the fact that we have these strings means that these were registered correctly with our string, our K-name system. And so those have been hashed and stored in memory, and we're good to go. We're now retrieving those. So that should work. I'm just going to continue this and see what happens. All right. Oh, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. Welcome. Diamond, good to see you. How are you? Is the game still happening? Yes. Yes, absolutely. We just kind of got back to engine dev for a little bit because we actually have, aside from the resource work that we're doing, we actually started getting a decent list of things that we need to implement. And so I want to get the resource system done. I want to get some of this stuff implemented, at least sort of the some of the simpler, more immediate needs. And then we can actually start deving the game, right? And then actually before, probably when we get close to feature complete on this list of stuff, minus like post effects could probably wait. You know, there's some pieces of this that could probably wait. We don't need right away. But yeah, once we have, you know, the absolute required stuff to start building out the game, we're going to start building out the game. We're going to come back to this document a lot. We're going to update it. We're going to design menu systems and levels and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's very much still happening. I have a very broad question. Is there any advantage to doing a Unity build for a project or multiple translation units? I recently have heard videos that you should have a Unity build, but I love the ease of having systems as different translation units. Yeah, so that is both a matter of preference and a matter of what you're actually doing. So in our case, we use our translation units to sort of, what's the word I want? Encapsulate stuff, right? So we use it to make some logic private so that it's not exposed to the entire code base. And so, you know, that's kind of what, if you switch to a Unity build, you kind of lose that. And so I like to have the ability to, you know, not necessarily have all the code exposed to the public code base, right? But again, you know, if we were to switch around and develop this whole thing as like a single header file at some point, to be included that way, then, you know, you wouldn't necessarily do that either. So it's all about what you're doing, right? Coffee Lava, how's it going? Good to see you, man. What's up, bro? Yes, we did decide on a game. We actually started putting together the game design document. So we don't have a name for it yet. But the basic idea of it is it's sort of an endless runner, and I use that in quotes because it's kind of based off of that, but not fully. And so the player basically pilots some sort of vehicle, and they travel along like a road or path that has obstacles to avoid. Enemies eventually come in, and you engage in combat with them, both ranged and melee, and some other stuff too, probably environmental things of that nature. And so you'll have different vehicles that each have different abilities. Some of them are like land only, some of them can fly, some of them can dive underwater. And so you have different, replayability with different vehicles on, the same levels and stuff like that. And so that's basically the idea is like an endless runner with combat is kind of where we're starting. And we're obviously going to hone it in from there, but we're kind of going for like a T-rated game that's going to have like action combat racing, with lots of humor built in. It's going to be PC only. We kind of started talking about some of the art style, the setting, some of the different vehicle designs, or at least some basics on vehicles, some random ideas we had that were just kind of coming up in chat. And then with some reference images like Road Rash 3D from back in the day, or the Final Fantasy VII motorcycle game were some immediate references for that. And then in terms of visual style, I'm thinking like a retro futuristic, aka Fifth Element style, mixed a little bit with cyberpunk / neon punk. So sort of a vibe a little bit like this. With like the with some toon shading and things like that, so kind of like a little bit Borderlands, a little bit like this, and then we just have name ideas and other stuff, right? So we have a basic idea, and all of that was to come up with basically a list of extra features that we're going to need to add to the engine to actually support this, which I'm sure that this list is going to grow, but before we continue with this too much further, we're going to we need to figure out the rest of this resource stuff, get this refactor handled, and then get some of these other features in. So I hope that answers your question. Aren't Unity builds also just clean builds most of the time, which may be worse for big projects? That's another thing, right? So yeah, you're always building everything every single time. So it might be fast, but like once your project gets to be in the hundreds of thousands of lines of code, I question how fast it'll be. Because yeah, you'll be building the whole thing every single time. Taman, how's it going? Tamandua, by the way, I saw your namesake. I went to a zoo with the wife over the weekend, and we saw a Tamandua, minus the suit. But yes, we saw your namesake over the weekend, which is pretty funny. I forgot to grab a picture. I didn't think about it until afterwards, but yeah, I figured you would be you'd be amused by that. You couldn't like Perforce do Unity builds with cached blobs, but it's complex. Yeah, and that's like, I don't know if I want to get into all that, right? Am I using SPD log in terms of like for our logger? No. Makes sense. I'm very new to C, so very impressionable. That's fair. No fancy C++ libs. Yeah, no, we have our own logging system. Dingus-oriented programming at its best, yeah. DOP. All right, so package plugin UI standard invalid primary asset path for standard UI Atlas. Load operation failed. Okay, so in this case, that's going to be, let's actually look this up. Invalid primary. All right, load operation fail. Right, because it could be primary or secondary. Okay, so this right here, the file system exists. Let's put a breakpoint there. Surprised that JetBrains Rider uses SPD log. Yeah. I mean, that doesn't surprise me too much for that kind of thing, right? Doesn't surprise me at all, actually. Okay. I don't need this breakpoint anymore. So our asset path is assets, textures, okay. So it looks like our primary asset versus our import process is not working correctly. Because it's saying our primary asset path, which is standard UI Atlas KBI, which is our binary image format, right? Which we don't actually have until something is actually imported. So if we take a look at, let's see, this is assets textures, right? Which I think this is actually, this is going to want to exist. Let me close some of this down. This is going to want to exist in oh, that's interesting too. There's a couple things wrong with this actually. So our package is going to be the UI standard package. I know that. We do have an entry for this, right? So that's the primary path. The source path is not here. So let's look at our asset manifest, because did we actually... We do have a source path here. Did we not update our asset system to read in the source path? Valid question. Let's close out some of this other crap that we don't need. So get source. Get asset data. Let me see. I think this should... It should know to fall back. Handler. VFS request asset. So we're requesting the primary asset here. And we're hard coding false. Handler request asset. It's a default. Oh, I see. Wait a minute, though. Wait a minute. Why is this...
On my way to 1 year.
Holy crap, Tamandua. You're right. Thank you so much for the resub, by the way, for 8 months. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support. It is going to be a year. We're going to blink. It's going to be a year. Lisa's, how's it going? So, request asset is... The image handler needs to actually have request asset, and that's not set. Why did we do that? We only have release. So we're going to have to actually do asset system requests. This doesn't take imports into account. Binary serialize. We did not actually handle the importer here. Didn't we? We have an importer registry, right? On base asset loaded. Did we go through that as the question? Texture system request, resource system request, resource handler texture. So this is just calling directly to this without actually trying to import it. So then we go to onResult, which should be here. Which I guess this probably actually should not be an error. Should not be an error at this point yet. Because file system close. File system exists. This isn't created till here, so we actually shouldn't. If data isn't even allocated either, we should actually just return false here. This should not actually be doing any of this stuff. Other than returning a result. Okay. All right. Let's kill this. And we'll go to let's see, that was like 140-ish. Yeah, so if we don't have right? We actually need to do the same thing in both of these cases. We shouldn't try the data cleanup because we haven't done this yet, right? And we don't have this yet, which actually this data is going to be a problem too if we do one of these jumps, right? So we actually need this, I don't know, like there, right? And then that. Okay. I don't know that that's going to fix it, but it should at least get us further. So we know that that asset doesn't exist. That's fine. What it should do, right, failed to load binary asset. But then it should fall back to trying to import the source asset. Which is, yeah, it's failing on this assertion because we didn't load the asset correctly, right? So like asset data is going to say file does not exist, right? So if file does not exist, then we should. This assert is in the wrong spot. Or I guess I should say requires valid context. This assert should probably be down here, actually. Right, so it should be this should be here. Oops. Right, so we only want to check the context size and the context if we have a successful load. Well, I guess wait a minute though. No, that's incorrect actually. That should have existed no matter what. Why didn't that exist? Yeah, we should have a context and a context size no matter what, actually. Okay, so when we go to do this, have base on asset loaded. So the context should be set when we request the asset, which is here. Context, right there. We should then, okay. Let's put a breakpoint here, right? Because this is what provides us with a pointer to the asset, the handler itself, the listener instance, and the user callback to be made once the asset request is complete. So we should break here first, right? We pass through the address of this, but then we should be taking a copy. Of that context, right? So context size is 32. That makes sense. Context is there, right? So then we go here. if context size, then out data, which is the VFS asset data. Okay. So we do take a copy of it. Okay, so that load operation failed. Okay, so out data now. Why does out data here not have a... What happened to our context? Oh. More dingus-oriented programming is what happened. Okay. BFS. Let's see, that was what? We should not be zeroing this out here. Actually, I don't think we need to be doing that at all, to be completely honest. Right, because they're just wiping out all this stuff that we did before. We definitely shouldn't be doing it there. If anything, it should be done... Oh, it's already done here. I can just delete that then. Okay. I'm just going to continue past this right now. Okay. So now we have a context size and a context. All right. So we can go ahead and grab that context. And in the context, we have the handler instance, user callback, asset, which should have everything in it we need. All right, perfect. So we were not successful. File does not exist. Now we do a VFS request asset requesting the source asset, right? I'm just going to continue this and see what happens. Okay, so no source asset path exists for asset standard UI atlas. Load operation failed. Okay, so it failed the primary because the primary doesn't exist. That makes sense. Why is it not loading the standard UI atlas source path, though, is the question. That might be an asset manifest issue. Let's see. So packages. Yeah, I don't think any of these are actually loading that correctly. So let's take a look at the let's see, that's going to be parse manifest file content. That's what we want. All right. Let's see. We want to look through references. We don't want that. We want assets. Here we go. So we have name path, but we're not doing source path. So if I take this and I look at UI standard, since that's the one we're actually dealing with, we have this source path here, right? So that's what we need to be referencing. We're already reading in path. We are not reading in source path. That'd be why. So let's take this. I think I was on the fence about how I wanted to actually do this. We don't need this type information either. And now this is going to be source path. Source path. Get string. Why is this bleating? Is there not a... We don't have it. Not sure why. Okay. There we go. So now we have that, which means that when we're processing the manifest file, we also need to, well, for one thing, asset manifest asset does have a source path. Okay, so we need to make sure to destroy this here. Okay, we don't store the type anymore. That can go away. Let's see, reference path. Asset manifest reference. Okay, I don't need that. Don't have to worry about that. Okay. So the only other thing is, when we do a create, I think it was create from manifest. Create from binary, create from manifest. Here we go. So we need to do this. We need to take a copy of the source path. Now when we go to load this, we should have that. I'm going to get rid of this assertion because I don't think we need a breakpoint there anymore. Okay. So let's go ahead and request this. Invalid source asset path. Source file does not exist to be imported. Asset handler failed to load anything for that. Okay, so now we need to figure out BFS request failed. Now we need to actually figure out why this path is invalid. Let's do this. Invalid source. Oh, I think it's got to be path for asset. Invalid. Yes. Okay. So right here. Okay, so the asset path here is that one. We expect that one to fail. Okay, so we have assets, textures, standard UI atlas. Now, the problem with this is, and I think this is what's happening, is we are not using any sort of base pathing for our package, like on disk assets, right? So this should be pulling from Kohi plugin UI standard / assets / textures, right? This. But it's not obviously doing that, right? It's only looking at assets textures, right? So we need to prepend, instead of having it look from essentially the bin folder where we're currently residing, right? It needs to go essentially up a directory and then into this directory and then this. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. This file does not exist would be a great title for a website that generates random files with AI. That's funny. Honest question, what can be gained from coding a game engine versus, say, using, say, Unreal Engine? Bunch of things. Depends on what your goals are. So if your goal is to learn, that's a huge one, right? Because you'll learn how all that stuff that Unreal does under the hood actually works within reason, right? You'll learn the bare bones tech underneath of it, but also a lot of times you can create an engine that is specifically tailored to your needs, right? So the problem with generalist engines like Unreal or Unity or Godot is those engines have to be kind of huge, right? They have to support a whole bunch of features that most people will probably never use all in one project, right? Some people use a certain set of features, another set of people will use a different set of features, right? And so, that makes the size of the engine a lot larger, makes the shipping it a lot larger, code base is more complicated, things like that. And so the one advantage to writing your own engine, or even just writing your own game and not really writing an engine, but writing a game directly, is that you only write what you need, and that's basically what you work with. Now, what we're building here is a bit of a generalist engine, but it's not generalist to the point of what Unreal is going to be, for example, right? We are probably going to have pretty specific types of games that are going to be used with this, but the idea here is that it can either be used as a full-blown game engine with an editor and all that stuff that you might find, which we're going to develop, but you can also use this as just I guess you could say like a framework. A framework is the word I'm looking for. So it's kind of both. What we're doing here is kind of both. So if you don't like the way that the engine sort of pre-configures things, in this case you can change it. In Unreal, that's a little bit harder to do. So there's pros and cons to everything, right? All depends on what you're trying to do. If you were to make the logger resilient to engine crashes, such that it's still able to do a final log of what happened, what went wrong, how would you do it? So it actually kind of is. So that's one of the reasons, like if we have a fatal error, we do write it to the log, and that gets written to disk, right? So there's that. The other thing that we're going to do is we have something that's called console consumers in this, which the file writing is a console consumer. That little debug drop-down window that we have is a console consumer. And eventually what we're going to have is we're going to have the ability to essentially package up the log and ship it off to a server, where we can then, maybe store it in a database or something like that, to gather metrics or to, report errors, things like that. And so that would be another thing that we can do. But if, it already kind of is capable of doing all of that. It's just a matter of maybe we could put a couple of extra calls in to write a few extra things out to the console at the very end. But at the end of the day, it already kind of does it. Thank you for the follow, by the way. By the way, can a C inline function from a different translation... Wait. Can C inline a function from a different translation unit if the translation unit is not in the header file? Depends on how it caches, but you could hook into the system signals. That's true too. Yeah, we could like for Windows, we could actually write to the event viewer if we wanted to. I don't plan on doing that, but it is something we could technically support. We have ads. I think I've missed like 2 ad breaks actually, but why are you using an RTX 2080 Super? It's just because that's what I have. It's just what I have installed. Yeah. This is my main rig that I also use for gaming, so yeah, I built it a few years ago, but yeah. You've had lots of ads? YouTube just does that, I guess. Are the how often are the YouTube ads coming up for you? Because I turned on like the auto management of ads. So are they like, oh, never? Yeah, it probably varies per person, just like Twitch does. Think you'll go to sleep now and watch the rest tomorrow morning? Fair enough. I appreciate you being here, Mr. Mustard. Thanks for being here and get some rest. We are almost done with ads. And we'll get back to it. Yeah, have a good one, man. All right. I tried Vulkan today. I have a new appreciation for what you do. I appreciate that. Yeah, Vulkan's its own beast, that's for sure. All right. Ads are dead. So we are now trying to load invalid. You know what? I should probably output the path as part of this error message. That would make a lot of sense. Let's do that. So we're going to have to do a couple things, actually. Let's see. So down here. So invalid asset path for asset, right? We're going to output the asset path here, right? We're just going to do that. I guess we'll surround it in quotes just so that we can clearly see it. And then we're going to do asset path there, right? So that way we don't have to sort of debug into it. Right, we're already kind of doing that down here when we go to read the actual file. Okay, so let's see, asset path. Okay, so what we need to do is we actually need to build a proper asset path. So we have this asset path here, which is either going to be the entry's source path, which would be something like this. Can you guys see that? It might be behind my head. There we go. So it might be something like this, or it'll be the entry path, which will be something like this, right? Both of these are relative paths, but they should be prepended with this path, right? Which is, this is actually wrong too. That's awesome. So this should actually be, let's see, plugin, UI standard. Okay, so we have that. So basically what we should do is we should take the, oh, wait a minute. This is a reference path. What am I doing? That is correct. Ooh, we don't actually have. When we load up the package, do we actually store that? Let's see. Create from manifest, right? So the asset manifest itself has a path to the K package file. I wonder if that actually contains that full path or just the directory. I don't remember. Let's debug that. So let's go to K package C. And we'll go all the way to the top here on create. Create from manifest. Let's just check this out real quick. Because this manifest will tell us, oh, nice, nothing is what it contains. That's cool. So we do need to fix that. So we'll do parse manifest file content. So the path here, let's actually, when we do this, what is the path that we are passed to that? Okay, so it does include this, right? So we do have a function that we could use to extract that directory from that path. So I guess, do we save this off anywhere? We should be saving it here. Let's actually do another, let's call this file path, and we'll call this path, right? And this will be the path containing the K package file without the file name itself. Right, we could do this all when we're loading this stuff. So we don't actually take a copy of that here, which technically is, it's not part of the path, but, or part of the parse, but we can do it here. So we want to check the path file content is going to be path. Okay, we want to check to make sure that exists first. We probably also want to make sure that the parsing is complete before we do that. That way we don't have to worry about anything else. And then we can go ahead and do let's see, I guess, what is it going to be? Out manifest. We'll do file path equals string duplicate path, right? And then we'll do string directory from path. I don't remember how this works. We might actually have to pre-allocate a string from that. I don't remember. Let's take a look at this function real quick. Oops. Okay, so we do basically reverse lookup on the string to the last slash, and then do a string end copy to destination. Let's see. Let's modify this function a little bit. String directory from path. Let me do a quick search. How many things are actually using this? Mesh loader is using it. And this is using it. Okay. I suppose we could stick it in a... We could just use a character buffer, I guess. Right, we could just do this, and then string trim, I guess. And then actually this is pretty much the exact thing we need. We'll just do it this way. I should probably simplify this API a little bit at some point, but all right. So for this, we're going to call this base path. And then we're going to zero that out, right? We're going to max it at 512. That should be more than enough. Directory from path. So we want to go into base path from path. We want to go ahead and trim that string, and then we want to append. No, we don't want to append anything. We want to, right? Yeah. We want to take the out manifest path and do string duplicate base path. Right? So we'll have that take a copy of the file path, take a copy of the directory to the file path. Right? So we hold that, and then we can use that as we're parsing our references. Sorry, not our references, our assets. When we go to open them. I wonder if we should do that first. Right, because we're taking, oops, this should be source path. What did I do? Source path there. I feel like we should probably do that in this step, right? There's nothing in here that could cause this to fail. So let's take this. In fact, let's go up here. Right before we process references. Let's put this here. Right, that way down here, we can just do all this pathing stuff as we're actually parsing the manifest file. That way, we don't have to do this whenever we actually make a request to the asset in real time. It'll already be done. Let's see. Oh, looks like we've got some messages to catch up on here. Ghost Magic, hello. First time chatter, welcome. Hi, I'm an aspiring game engine developer. I had been creating my own ECS 2D game engine in C++ before and currently planning to rewrite it in Odin. Nice. Do you have any resources on technologies to make game engine such as culling that are easy to understand? Probably math stuff too if you had any. Yeah, all the math stuff is available on a YouTube channel. It's called, I think it's 3 brown, 1 blue. I want to say. There's basically anything about math you would need is on that channel. Let me pull it up real quick. 3 blue, 1 brown. I had it backwards. Dyslexia is a bitch. Yeah, so this right here. It looks like they actually have a website, but there is actually a YouTube channel based around this too. So if you look up 3 blue, 1 brown, this is an excellent resource on that on math stuff. In terms of, let's see. Do you need high performance math? Are you familiar with SIMD? Zero idea on that. Considering you're doing 2D, your requirements might be a bit looser. Yes, that's true. So it depends on, like, 3 blue, 1 brown. Yeah, Tamandua, that's exactly what I meant. Yeah, I always get that backwards for some reason. Yeah, for 2D game, I wouldn't even bother with SIMD. It probably is not going to make that big of a difference. You could probably just roll it yourself. You could start with the GLM library. It depends on whether or not you want to learn how all this stuff works under the hood, truly, or if you just want to get something working, right? If you're wanting to get into game engine development, though, you're going to have to understand linear algebra, and that's a big part of it. So reading the code is one thing, but understanding how all that stuff works under the hood is much more important, at least conceptually. Yeah. When I discovered that the name 3B1B is because of his eye, my mind exploded. I always kind of assumed it meant that because look at the logo. It looks like an iris. Yeah. I have a strong background in linear algebra, so I might be biased. That's fair. Yeah, but linear algebra is definitely a requirement for that, for sure. Just got a YouTube ad. Okay. Yeah, it's hard for me to tell. Like, I don't think I have visibility as to when they actually run. All right. So instead of let's see, allocates new memory. Okay. So instead of extracting directly to asset path and asset source path here, we're going to extract to a temporary string. So we'll say const character array asset path temp, right? And we're going to do asset path temp. And we're going to do asset source path temp. Const character array asset source path temp. Okay, let's actually we'll default both of these to 0, even though we know this is going to be allocated by that, right? And then what we'll do here is let's see, how do we want to do this? We'll go ahead and do a U64 total string length equals string length. We want of asset path temp, right? We want the length of that plus the length of what is it? Out manifest path plus 1. And the reason we want that is we want to account for a slash character as well, right? And so actually we don't even need to do this. I'm overcomplicating it. This is actually way simpler than this. Let's do asset path equals string format, right? Our format string is going to be the first string slash the second string. And we're going to do out package. Why is it not out package? It's out manifest. Out manifest. Wow, why is it doing that? Go away. All right. Out manifest path. Right, we're going to combine that with asset path temp. And that's going to be our fully qualified path, right? I don't want to call it fully qualified. Let's say full path of the asset, right? So that should be the package path plus all of this other stuff. And then we have the same thing here for the source path. source path of the asset. So this is going to be, oops, not that one. Asset source path. Right, and then this needs to be source path. Which technically means I guess we shouldn't include this, but I think it'll actually be fine with that in there, in the middle of the path. The only other thing is we need to make sure that we don't leak this. So let's do string free asset path temp. And we don't want to leak this one either, which is going to be asset source path temp. And I think that should be it. Okay, let's try this. Let's see, that's the parse. So what I really want to do is I want to just come down here right before we push an asset. I just want to, oh, that's interesting. Failed to get asset source path. What? Oh, right, because not all of them have a source path. Hold on. Okay. Forgot about that. Source path needs to be optional. So we don't want to do that. We want to say if it exists, then we do that. Right? So if it exists, then we fill it out. Otherwise, we don't. Okay. That should get rid of those warnings. And actually, let's put the breakpoint here so that we can see one that has a source path. All right, so we'll take a look at this. So it looks like we go up one, testbed kapp. Okay, so we have some extra stuff in there which I could strip out, right? But I think that should be fine. That should still parse okay. So I'm going to get rid of this and continue. And get rid of this, continue. Okay, so we're going to request the asset. This first one is going to fail, which we do expect that. The next one, though, let's see. Asset load from VFS successful. Source asset loaded. Okay. So that's a step in the right direction. That means that we probably have the data that we need. Maybe. Requires parameters to be present. Okay, so let's look at see what that is all about. Okay. Let's go ahead and reload this because I just want to hit that breakpoint to see what's going on there. I'm going to get rid of this one because it looks like at least part of it's working correctly. All right, so this is the primary asset path. We know that is no good, but we don't hang up the second time around, right? So we have no params. Why do we not have params for the import? So we actually need like these import options. What are the other options? Options format, right? So, okay. So when we go to import this, this is a generic import. So that's interesting. Okay, so this k-asset utilities is basically our generic like on asset loaded. Like, hey, we've loaded up an asset from disk. What do we want to do with it? And in this case, it is a source asset, right? Which is true because we loaded it from a we loaded it from a PNG, right? So we can tell by looking at that here. So we need to take here's the size of that data, right? And our context actually has the data inside of it. We've selected an importer, right, which is the image importer, so that's correct. That worked correctly. The only problem is this is generic, so to speak, right? And this is looking for some sort of specifically typed import information, which is where the problem is, right? Because this is saying it requires, where is it? It's saying it requires parameters to be present. So how do we know, based on this import, what parameters should be present? So I suppose we could like set some of this stuff to be default, right? But eventually we're going to need, like when we import a texture, for example, we could say, yes, it's always going to be RGB8, which right now is the only option, right? Eventually there will be more. So we could hard code this for now, but that's going to bite us when we need to import an image format other than that, right? Like what if we want to just do RGB8 without the alpha, for example? Or what if we only want the red, or we only want the green, or we only want the blue? What if we want, you know, a different bit depth? How do we tell the importer that that's what we want from something generic like this? Let's see. Yeah, the guys in chat are actually giving some pretty good advice for sure. Google the math once you run into a problem. That's a really good. Boku no Segfault. I love the name, by the way. That's funny. Learn-GL is great for getting into 3D. I would agree with that. Yeah. Raylib is also great. Yep, I would agree with that too. I would say, depending on what your experience is, I would also use some of the commercial engines that are out there to just make simple projects, just to kind of understand how they work, so that you know what you want to do different with your engine. For sure. Walk to the nearest library for information? Yeah, of course. Naturally, that's it. Is this a structural refactor or is it functional? It's both. So we're refactoring the way that resources and assets are handled in the system. We used to have a concept of like just resources that kind of did the asset loading on its own. But we split those two concepts apart, and assets can also be part of packages, which can then be sort of baked into a binary blob when we go to ship it, so that we don't have a bunch of loose assets sitting on disk, for example. And so we have that, and then we also have the new way that this assets system is handling things is going to be able to be Jobified, so we can multi-thread it, as well as the resource loading can also be Jobified, the way that we're writing it. So it's both structural and functional. I do the simplest thing you can for now, let patterns emerge on their own, then refactor as necessary, which is pretty much what we've been doing. So I guess what I could do in the case of this importer is go the old fix me route, right? So I would go with requires parameters to be present, right? So if we don't have parameters, instead of doing this, right, what we're going to do is we're going to k-warn import image import, no params defined using defaults. So the reason that we have this importer set up this way also is because, generally speaking, you're not going to be auto importing assets a lot, right? The idea is that you would trigger this from an editor, which would then include all of that information that you need. So like maybe falling back to a set of defaults is not such a bad thing, right? And so I guess what we could do, if params, let's do this. Right, we'll do that, and then we'll do this, right? And then up here, how do we want to do this so that we have a few places we could kick out of here, so I don't really want to like allocate. Okay, let's do this. We'll also say, I'm just going to do this here for now. It'll just be on the stack. It will be fine. Importer options, default options. Right, and then we'll do default options, flip y. I believe that needs to be true by default, and then default options format equals k asset image format RGB8, right? And then here we'll do, options equals address of default options. Seems like the simplest route. The blind man method. Yep, more or less. All right, so let's see where this gets us. At least that way we've got some sort of reasonable default, right? Okay. Using defaults. So out asset. Okay, perfect. So we did that correctly. We have pixels. We do not. Wait. Yes, we do. It just happens to be the first one is that. Okay, that's fine. Actual size, pixels, MIP levels. Okay. Oh, this should be interesting. So, what we're going to do is we're also going to run this through the serializer, and let's see if this actually writes out the imported image to the correct path. Should be interesting to see if this actually works. So this should appear in assets textures if it works correctly. So that's the serialized block, right? So we do have that. And out asset is going to be, you know what? I'm just going to skip over it and see what happens. Oh, look at that. We wrote out an image. That's awesome. Now, whether or not that actually works correctly or not will remain to be seen, but at least on the surface, it worked. Although we immediately hit a bug afterwards because this should be not. This should be a negation check. So that's going to be, let's see, 88. This should be a negative check. Okay, so in theory, that means that we should load the image, the binary version of that image right away this time. We shouldn't get that first failure. This is weird. Package plugin UI standard does not contain asset standard UI atlas, but then it says it loaded it successfully. Using binary deserialization to read primary asset. So the question is, did it do the thing? Do we have a valid width and height? That looks promising. Channel count, MIP levels 10. Okay, channel count, that's obviously not right. That didn't get serialized correctly. That's obviously wrong, so that's probably going to cause some fallout. But okay, let's just continue. That's probably going to poop itself. Segmentation fault. State, backend. K resource, texture, resources acquired. Oh, we didn't assign a function pointer. What a dingus. Okay, that is a renderer issue. So we just need to hook that up here. Let's see, that was texture resources acquire. Right, so we have that version of acquire and release. But we need the K resource version of that. I guess we don't have that one yet. Is that not? K resource texture map resources acquire. Wait a minute. Vulkan render, K resource texture. What? Do we not have that? Texture resources acquire. We did this for the resource texture map. But we didn't do it for... Okay. We apparently didn't do it for textures. I thought we did all that work. So see here we have the version for texture map stuff. We have that down here. But we did not do that here. Right, so this is going to be old and new. Okay, so we're going to have to do new versions of this. Right, so we want the K resource versions of this. And we need that and that. So paste these here. We need that and that. And then we need to actually, so we have texture internal data. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe this doesn't matter. Texture data images. Because those are just Vulkan images. That might be why I didn't create them, because it doesn't actually matter. At the end of the day, as far as Vulkan's concerned, we just have images. Okay. Undo that. Undo that. And we actually don't need texture resources acquire. Oh, because of the K-name stuff. That's the only reason. I think we can get around that, though. So we actually don't need this. I think. The only thing that this is bleating about, I think, is the type in the name, I want to say. Thank you for the follow. Oh, I just noticed the stretch redeem. Thank you for that. Sometimes I get like super embedded in coding and I just don't necessarily notice everything. Do you have any hobbies outside of coding? Yes, I do. Well, I used to be a drummer. I don't do that as much anymore. Well, I don't do it at all anymore. I don't have a kit anymore. Arthritis kind of got my way there, unfortunately. But otherwise, I do like some gardening out back. Like we grow a lot of food in our backyard, so that's kind of something that we like to do. Um, I do enjoy gaming from time to time too. So that's obviously not too far removed from this, but one of my biggest one of my biggest hobbies rather is programming. It's probably my largest one, but yeah. Favorite drummer? I would have to say it's somewhere between Neil Peart from Rush and I also really like Alex Bent from Trivium. Those are probably two of my top. Stuart Copeland, yeah, of course. I mean, there's lots of greats out there, right? Like it's hard to like say. It's hard to pick just one or two, really. There's lots of them out there, for sure. Neil Peart is the goat. Yeah, well, he was. Yeah, unfortunately, he's not. He's not alive anymore. It's a shame. Um, your dad's a drummer? Nice. Yeah, I love the hell out of it, but unfortunately, I I started getting psoriasis about 10 years ago or so. And with that comes, in my case, because you can get this sometimes along with it, psoriatic arthritis, which is where the same sort of autoimmune reaction that you get from psoriasis, which is what creates like patchy things on your skin, will also attack your joints, which is super painful sometimes. And so my joints just can't take the percussion anymore, unfortunately. No, his mind is not for rent to any god or government. That's funny. Have I checked Eloy Calcigrande? I have not. New Brazilian Slipknot drummer. Oh, okay. Joey Jordison was awesome too. Uh, there's also Estepario Siberiano. If you've not seen his stuff, like he's nuts. He's really 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 good. He does all kinds of like trick stuff. It's Tom Sawyer easy. Kai Hato from Winter Sun. Yeah, he's another one. Yep. Familiar with him too? Yep, for sure. Max Roach. Max Roach. The name sounds familiar. I can't place it though. Coffee lava over here. Yeah. Um. So this is just bleating about the texture type. And actually, doesn't this want... So we can't use name here. We've got to use k-name string get name. And then the type is going to be did we actually set up a function for that? I can't remember. K resource utils. Image format to texture format to image format, but we don't have one to convert from the old format to the new. All right, let's get rid of that one, and we'll do... I guess I can just do this in line. That feels kind of gross, but K-resource texture type. Let's do this, and then we'll do texture type, old type. We should probably eventually fix this as well, but equals texture type 2D. And then we'll just do default here. Old. Actually, I'll just do this. Kai plays a Nightwish for work and Winter Sun for sports and jazz for fun. That's right, because what's his name from Nightwish, I think, had Juka, I think was his name, right? Didn't he have like insomnia issues or something? If I remember correctly. I don't know if he ever got over that. Okay, so we actually don't need this last one. That could be default. 2D. Do we not have... Yeah, we do have cube array. Why is it not showing? Oh, it should be cube array. Cube, and then 2D array. Okay. And then here we could just use old type. All right. Why is this bleating? K resource. Oh, because it should just be that. Okay. Let's put a big old fat fix me here. Convert function call below to use the new type. There's a bunch of places that call this code though, so I don't necessarily want to switch everything over to have to use it at once. Haven't followed Nightwish that much, even though I should. Yeah, this was like 10 plus years ago that they had that issue. I haven't followed them as much in recent years. The Sons of Winter and Stars by Winter Sun is mind-numbing song. The blast beats and signature changes on the fly just throws me off every time. But it all works so well. Yeah. That's how I feel about Alex Bent's drumming. Yeah, his drumming for Trivium is pretty amazing stuff. All right, let's try running this. All right, I'm just going to continue past this for now, and let's see what we get. All right, so we are getting some foobar stuff here. But it looks like we actually might have loaded the asset correctly. I'll have to get to the bottom of where all these validation errors are coming from, but I have a feeling that we're not binding a texture correctly. And this is bleating about layout changes too, so we'll have to see what is going on with that. OpenAL errors, nobody cares. Oh, don't want case sensitive. Okay. Creating default texture. So our default texture is just not correct at all. Why is it using the... I think we need to get to the bottom of this. because I think that's what most of these errors are actually coming from now. I think our asset stuff is straightened around, right? Although I do question why this says does not contain asset when it clearly did because we loaded it. If is not package roll success. Thank you for the follow. Welcome. Let's go ahead and just have a look at this. So it does not contain asset. So the name string that we're using is... Oh, right, but this is potentially not true if it's a primary load, right? Get source. Let's actually kill this message. Right? Because it's actually, like, we should probably be bleating about that elsewhere besides that. Because that's also trying to, like, load the primary resource, which may or may not exist. Right, because we see here that our asset load from VFS is successful. Primary asset loaded using binary deserialization to read primary asset. All right. So that's going to continue and like throw all those errors. Okay. So what I want to do now is I actually want to go before all this stuff, right here when we're creating default texture. Okay. We're going to have a look at this and see if we can't figure out why this is doing it. Okay, first off, we should probably, let's go to texture system. Actually, what was that, like line 650? Yeah. Let's take this, and when we're doing the new resource texture, let's put out another one. We'll say creating default resource texture. Okay. And I think it was able to get the texture resources correctly. Yeah, we didn't get any errors for that, I don't think. So I'm going to run this again. And let's go ahead and stop the application there. And okay, so it's not the default texture that's causing the problem. That's kind of what I was thinking. It's the default resource texture that's causing the problem. So we probably need to go to there. So that's going to be texture system. Right here. Okay, so here's all the info that we need. So we create a single array. The pixel data is there. We take a copy of that pixel data, right, which should be the same, roughly the same thing. Info base type texture, and then resource system request, right? So this should not actually trigger like the loading of an asset or anything. So we do not have, let's see, wait a minute. String lookup, name. Wait a minute. Kname create default texture name. Oh, right. Yes. Okay. So we should have, that's the kname create. I don't care about that. So out resource. We do have a handler. We're going to go ahead and request that that handler do the thing. Right? We're saying assets are not required, so we skip all this. Take in all of this required data. All right. Write result. Wait a minute, though. Don't we... So we have pixels. We have pixel array size, no offset, render or texture handle. This is the problem. We do not have, we did not, we don't have a proper handle for this, I don't think. This is just zeroed out memory. So it's going to go in there. That's why we're getting the swap chain image, because the swap chain image is the first one that is in there. Okay. So when we do, in fact, this is going to be a problem here and here. It's going to be a problem no matter what we do in either of these situations, because we did not request resources, I don't believe. We did not request resources for that texture. That's why. All right. And this is where I'm going to wind up having to end the stream for tonight, because I just realized I'm over time. But I'm going to try something really fast, and if it doesn't immediately work, then we're going to end. So this is the one I want to try it on. Render texture. Resources acquire. Whoops, why is that? I don't want that to be commented. This needs the state, the name. Oh boy. Height, channel count, MIP levels, all that good stuff. Okay. What does this want? The renderer state. Let's see, typed request. Type. what would I use for the name for this? Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Do we have... I guess that'd be the resource, right? So resource name is probably what we'd want to use. Texture type, width, height, right? So it's going to be typed resource, typed resource, width, typed resource, height, typed resource, channel count, oops, channel count, I think. Was it not channel counts? Why did it give me the... Oh, the channel count I've got to extrapolate from the format. Crap. All right. Let's just do, just to see if this works. Let's do 4 there, right? MIP levels, array size. Array size. And what else? Flags, and then the out handle. All right, so typed resource flags, and then the address of typed resource render texture handle. Okay. Fix me format to channel account. So don't forget to undo that later. See if this works. Does not look like it. Okay. All right. Well, it was worth a shot. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to leave it here for tonight. And then we'll pick up tomorrow because I'm already over time. So let me see if I can find somebody to raid. But before I do, I just want to say thank you to you guys for being here. I really appreciate you guys showing up and interacting and following along with the project. So thank you guys very much for your support. Speaking of that, if you haven't already, I would ask that you go ahead and follow / subscribe depending on what platform you're on. Those things help me out a lot. And it looks like we're almost at 2,000 followers on Twitch, which is kind of awesome. So really appreciate that. Thank you guys very much. Coding things, have a good one. Cyberlanka, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. JT Gill, I appreciate that as well. Thank you. And what I'll do is I'll find somebody to raid, and then I'll drop a link over on the YouTube side as well. So let's see. I'm going to quickly find somebody to raid here. Let's go ahead and... I want to find something that's kind of related if I can really quickly. You know what, actually, let's do something a little different tonight, actually, because I haven't done this in a little bit, and I like to support the cause. We're gonna raid Alves Sanctuary. So they are a non-profit animal rescue, and just actually having this up on the screen, just letting it play, helps to support the cause, right? So they take animals in that can't survive in the wild, and they take care of them and give them a permanent home. So I like to support this whenever I can. And so just by leaving it up on the screen, the ad revenue helps them out a ton. So I'm going to go ahead and support that. And with that, thank you guys very much for being here. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.